no. I really thought I was going to contain the corrosion to this quarter, this front bit. Unfortunately, it's gone a lot further. Yep, okay, so I think it's probably time to start the job that maybe I've been putting off for a little while. No, not really. Okay, we're gonna hit the corrosion now. The trouble with corrosion is you never know quite how big it is behind. I can see the little hole at the front, but by the time I've cut all the corrosion and the rust out, we're not quite sure how big a hole we're gonna have. Anyhow, we've got to crack on with it. So it's wheel off, bumper off, wing off, and then we can get cracking. Just a quick little tip. So the bumper goes back in exactly the same place as it's in now. I've just used a bit of masking tape to follow the bumper iron. It just makes life a lot easier and a lot quicker when we put it back. So we're at the point now where I'm going to undo the wing bolts. All the bolts that you undo, we have to be really careful with. The bumper one looked like it had been done fairly recently, so I wasn't too worried about undoing those ones, but these ones, I'm not sure when the wing was last undone. So we have to work the bolts and work them gently. So we're going to go tight first, always tight first, just to break that corrosion off the thread and then back them out. But it might take a little bit of wiggling backwards and forwards until they actually become free. So we're going to go tight first. Just a bit, that managed to move, and then just start gently backing them out. That's it. And obviously when we put these back, we're going to put them back with lashings and lashings of copper grease so they don't get seized in. So we've got one of the wing bolts that's spinning around but not undoing, so I need to check out and see what's going on the inside. Is the captive nut broken off, or is it nut and bolt? Let's have a look. So this should have a captive nut this side, but obviously at some point either the thread's been stripped or whatever's happened to it. So they've cut it off and put a nut and bolt on, which is fine. Just makes it a little bit more fiddly. So I need to hold this and undo the other side as well. One little hiccup, nothing too serious. Managed to undo all the other bolts apart from one. One won't undo, the captive nut's broken and it's spinning round and round. So I'm gonna have to cut him off. And obviously when grinding or doing something really noisy and dangerous, don't forget all your safety gear. Ears, eyes, and hands. So the easiest way to get that is to absolutely chop the head off, and I'm gonna go straight in from above. I'm not gonna try and chop it off from underneath. So I'm gonna do like the hot crossbone effect. So I'm going to cut down, spin it, cut down again, and then we can knock the head off and get it out. So now that's pretty much most of the head of that dead bolt removed. Put up a little bit of a fight, but there we go. Minimal fuss, minimal damage as well. So now I can just sneak the wing out from behind it, like so. I left one bolt in at the top so the wing didn't just fall off. So all I need to do is let the car down, undo that last bolt, we take the wing off. Whoop. There we go. Okay. There we go, let's find somewhere good to put that. Now I've got the wing off, we can actually see the extent of the corrosion. Not all of it, but it is actually, yeah, it's what I thought. It's always worse than you first think. It's all pretty wet behind there, look. It's all pretty crusty. So that's been wet behind there for some time. So that means that maybe all of this might need cutting out here, but also going back this way to the A-pillar. So that means next I'm going to have to take off the running board and have a look and see how far that corrosion goes this way, and then we can decide what we're going to do. Now we've got the running board removed, it's actually looking quite good. I thought the corrosion may have sort of crept all the way along this part of the channel here, but it actually hasn't. It's really good. So it stops about here on the outside. That's cool. So the plan of action is, I've got a repair panel, which I'll show you, which is this one here. And this covers pretty much all our corrosion that we can see externally at the moment. So we've got a bit of grot here. Seams sort of busting out here, and obviously here. So the water has got down behind here. So I need to take all of this off anyway. The great thing about this repair panel is that it covers all of that. So if I put that up there like so, and also you remember the captive thread I had to cut out, well, this is part of that replacement, so that's even better. What I'm going to do, I'm going to, with my magic white pencil, I'm going to mark where this panel actually fits. So that will give me the maximum of where we can go to repair-wise. So let's do that first. Right. So I now know that's my absolute maximum I can go to. If I go any further than that, then I'll have to change the whole panel, which we don't want to do. But that means I can keep the repairs probably maybe that sort of size, and then cut this panel down afterwards. But obviously I won't know until we start cutting away how bad it is behind. So I'm going to pick a place where the corrosion I think has stopped. I think we're going to cut about here first. Obviously it's above the channel inside, so I'm going to have to make sure the carpet's removed indoors. But once I've cut through here, drilled out the spot welds on the end here, and then drill out the spot welds all the way through here, we should be able to remove this piece and then look behind and get a better idea of what the repair is going to consist of. But we won't know until we're at that point. So let's get cracking. And as you see from the sticker, ooh, this is one of our panels. We have an amazing array of panels for VW Beetles actually. So if you're needing panel work for your Beetle, we've got you covered. Keep that in there. So I think we're pretty much ready to do our first cut. Now, I have put quite a bit of protection on the car. We need to protect the glass and the paintwork when grinding. And you also need to make sure you know where you're directing your sparks. Like, you know, I've got a bit of a toweling around the brake pipes and that sort of thing, because we obviously want to keep the sparks away from that area. And as I say, off the glass is very important. As soon as you get a grinding spark on the glass, that's the glass ruined. So we're going to do a little cut to start with, just to see. This is actually inside our heater channel section in the car. So I'm going to cut to this first white line, and then we can remove this section and have a look how much of this we need to remove afterwards. So let's get cutting. Next, I'm going to try and drill out the spot welds, the original spot welds, to remove this panel as clean as possible. Worst case scenario, I'd have to grind all the spot welds off or use a spot weld drill bit. So that's what we're going to start with, a spot weld drill bit. And I'm going to drill, I've marked all the spot welds with a black pen so I can see exactly where I need to drill. And then hopefully be able to peel that away from the rest of our corroded bit there, and we can clean that up underneath once it's off. But the idea is to get that panel off as clean as possible so we can see what's behind. So I've cut my little exploratory piece out just so we could have a better look at what we've got, and oh dear, it's a little bit worse than I thought. The heater channel's quite corroded, and there's been some like patching and stuff up underneath here, so I think this section's been put in over the top. Anyway, so next cut, we're going to go further up. I'm going to take that lot out. Not going to muck about now. So a little bit more cutting and a little bit more looking, and we can see that this has been repaired before. It's got some sort of layers going on here. See, this has obviously been done at some point, quite nasty, and then this chucked over the top. This, I don't know what's going on here, and there's some filler and stuff here. So this is all a bit of a mess here. I'm gonna have to cut it all out and start again, I think. Quite a few layers going on there, which is novel. Anyway, that's most of that rubbishy stuff cut out. A little bit more to do, and then we can start cleaning up and getting ready to put some new stuff back in. So we've cleaned up the edges, quite good, apart from the heater channel part I've had to remove as well. A horrible MIG welding across the top here that was actually connecting all those layers that we didn't need, so I've ground all that back, and this is actually really quite strong and good, and it's cleaned up quite nicely. And then I've cut this bit out, because this was quite crusty. As you can see, it's still quite crusty on the back, and lots of crustiness in there that we need to deal with. And need to get rid of all of this, and then see if this edge will either clean up, or I might have to do some repairs with that edge as well. So quite a lot to do, but a bit more cleaning. Anyway, that's where we're at the moment. So I've cleaned up the metal best we can, and unfortunately, it's not looking very good. I say we're going to just have to remove a little bit more than I first thought. This heater channel itself, I haven't got anything. This is like paper now, unfortunately. I've cleaned it, but I can't weld to that. So I've got to take this section out. I'm going to take the lower part of the A-pillar away also, as it's quite grotty in there, and while we're here, it would make replacing this section a lot easier with this out the way. And then I'm going to try and make good of this quarter panel without changing, obviously, the quarter panel itself. So this is going to be a repair with our repair panel, and maybe a bit more that I need to make up. So quite a bit more work, but first, before I do any more, I'm going to strip all of this paint off here. As you can see, it's sort of cracked a bit here, so there's a bit of filler here. I think they've probably repaired this bolt hole for the wing. That's probably what that is. And you can see that this seam is not as it should be. That should be like a factory rolled seam, but that's not. So I'm going to clean that up as well. And then we can get cracking. As you can see, I've cleaned all the filler off, and oh my God, what did we find? Look at this. So this has obviously had some repairs before. This is particularly sort of, well, a little bit ugly, I would say. The panel's quite distorted. It's had a repair down this seam as well, which has distorted the whole panel, hence why there was so much filler on there. Yeah, not that good. I was hoping not to find that, but we have, so I'm going to have to address that. But first, I think I'm just going to get on with the structure side of it and then come back to that and have a chat with Lewis and see what he wants to do. After all, it is his money that we're spending. So I know I've definitely got to do this, so let's get that bit unbolted. And look, we found the original colour paint. So we've got green here, we've got red. We knew it was painted red at some point, and then obviously the black over the top. Wow, 3 colours in its lifetime so far. So I've removed our bolts that actually bolt this closing section down to the floor pan. Let's just do a little strength check and see how, oh wow, that's pretty crusty, isn't it? Yeah, there's not a lot of strength left back in that. So I do need to chop that out. to repair the A-pillar. As you saw, I had to heat up a couple of the lower bolts for fixings for the door to actually get them undone. They were quite corroded. So we plan to cut through this bottom section and replace this lower part of our A-pillar and part of the heater channel as well. So the lower part of the heater channel and the upper bit that goes over the top. But obviously what I need to do first is take some measurements because once I start cutting, I don't want things to move too far. So I'm going to take some measurements of the door width and up and down and anywhere I can get a datum on really, and write those numbers down so we don't lose them. And then it's down to cutting it out. The next little job I did was to make a frame up. So I've got a frame that's fitted from the B post here all the way back to the top of the A-pillar and then drop down to the sill. And what that does is, one, gives us a datum for measuring, so I can measure from here to our A-post, but also gives us rigidity. So it stops anything flexing and moving once I've cut. What I didn't want to do is cut it off and then the A-pillar move, and then we're in trouble, the door won't fit. So that's what that's for. The measuring I did, I can show you exactly where I measured. So you can never measure too much. It's always a good idea to keep measuring and measuring and write down everything you can. So I've measured the width between our datum point here that I've welded in back to our A-post. Also, I've done from the hinge to the top of the hinge, and I've done from the tunnel back to our bolt center points for the lower hinge as well. So I can't get anything wrong now. So basically I can cut out, and when we're welding back in, I've got a load of measurements I can tie up before we actually weld. So with that done, I can't delay it anymore. We've actually got to cut the pieces out now. So this is the fun bit for me, maybe not for Lewis. Let's see how it goes. Our A-pillar out and our heater channel out, and then discovered, unfortunately, a little bit more. If you look here under this is our weather strip that goes between the floor pan and our heater channel. Unfortunately, we've got some corrosion here and here and a little bit further under. So we've got a little bit more work to do. So that's our next job, is to repair that before I can go any further. So I've got to start there, and then we're going to put our heater channel in, then we're going to put our A-post in, and then we're going to deal with the quarter panel. Oh no. So it did get worse, unfortunately. I really thought I was going to contain the corrosion to this front bit. Unfortunately, it's gone a lot further, but it's okay, because I spoke to Lewis and he's actually quite happy. And now we're going to put a complete front to rear floor pan in this side. Let me pop it up in the air and I'll show you why. So like I said, I was trying to contain it to sort of just this front area, but as I was coming back, I was cutting back to try and find some good metal underneath our heater channel, which we've got here, but unfortunately we haven't got here. So I couldn't join our bit to this tired old floor pan, unfortunately. It's very holy, and if I struck the welder up on that, it would go straight through it. So, okay, so I was going to go further back, and the further back I looked, you could see that the more I picked, the more corrosion there was. Looking from above, that is actually the seat runner part of it, which is pretty darn important. It needs to be really strong. So then that would take me further back. So I'm ending up cutting almost 3/4 of the floor pan out and then leaving this bit in, which is old. So again, that seems pointless considering it's only this section and then we've done a complete pan. So the plan of action is removing a floor pan. Not always that easy. First thing to do is make sure your bolts come out of this heater channel that bolts through, the floor pan bolts through into the heater channel. All these bolts actually came out with some gentle working, backwards and forwards, bit of magic spray, out they come. So that's good. Then there's a couple up here that need to be done and 2 inside. So I had to remove the last corner from here, and then the last two are actually from inside. So I've removed the battery and the associated parts around the battery, like the battery clamp and so forth. Both seats are out now, the carpet's out now, so we're almost ready to cut. And with the angle grinder, I'm going to cut along this line here, this is the main spine. So we're going to cut along here, all the way along, up to the back and across the front, and that will take the whole pan pretty much out. And then I'll need to clean up on the inside where that pan's overlapped this main spine and get rid of the spot welds or the MIG welding that's at the front, ready to receive the new floor pan. You can see I've cut the bottom off the heater channel. I was going to put a nice new bottom on it. I'd measured up where the holes were. It was all going to be lovely. But unfortunately, the rest of the heater channel is not good. So, ready? Oh, so that goes right through. Damn it, some more rust. So it's going further back than we intended. But to make life a little bit simpler, we are going to put a complete heater box section in. Heater channel, but that means I've got to do a little bit more measuring and a little bit more bracing. So I'm going to brace from the B-pillar seatbelt mount right across back to the tunnel, and then I'm going to have to put a new datum in across to be able to measure the height of our heater channel before we go any further. So that's a bit of a job, but that's fine. That's the next step. Also, while I was cutting the floor pan out, I noticed there was a bit of a horrible repair panel done on the tunnel. So I've cut that out to reveal why that had been cut out and re-welded originally. And the reason being, I think it's had the fuel pipe replaced at some point. So somebody had cut the little letterbox out to put fuel pipe in, but the welding that went back in was pretty rough. So I've cut the whole thing out and I've made a new part to go back in. So on a positive note, this is the first piece being welded back into the car. So here's the piece I've made. As you can see, it's got a 90 bend in it for the return edge. And I've drilled all the holes through as well. So this is going to allow me to do plug welding. So similar to spot welding, but plug welding with MIG. So that'll go weld through onto the bottom of the spine, and then I can grind that flat, and that will allow us to put our floor pan in. So this sort of fits somewhere around here. Let me clamp it in position so you get a better idea of where we're at. Like so. As you can see, that should straighten this bit of the tunnel up. No end. So we're ready to start tacking. That's what I'm going to do first, is tack it all in position all the way along and then weld it afterwards. Right, stop smacking my helmet on the bits and bobs up there. Let's get cracking. Right, so I'm going to let's make sure that bit's lined up lovely. So that feels nice and flat. So I'm going to put a tack on here. It's literally just a little tack like that, lovely sound. And then we'll work our way along and do the same all the way along. Right, okay, how's that look? That looks really good. Right, next. Another bit that's lining up is here. So again, I'm just going to use the clamp that I've put on just to pull the metal out so it's flush with the tunnel. And then we can put another spot on. Like so, that's good. Double check that before we go any further. Obviously, if you get it wrong at this point, it's really easy just to grind off that tack and go again. But that looks pretty good. So I'm just putting a tack in the middle of all the other tacks I've done, just to stop the panel moving away from each other, which works quite nicely. I'll work my way back down this end. I think we're just going to have to manipulate this end with a hammer a little bit. Let's do that. It's looking good though. Cool. As you can see, these tacks have kept the two parts of the material sort of level all the way along. Here, unfortunately, my tack here, the metal's actually dipped behind, so I'm going to grind that off and pull that forward. Move that where I want it to go. So I've just popped a little offcut of steel in this end to bring the panel out so that it's flush here. And then once I've welded it here, I can start moving along, pop that back out. Okay, so now we can go again where we've moved our panel. So have a little tack on here. That's better. Pop one in the middle of that. And come back this way. Take the material out. And with a little push, that should line up the rest of it. Lovely, I'm pleased with that, that's good. So that's the top run of tacks done all the way along, and I can start coming down each edge, and then we can start clamping this together and spot welding them together. Or plug welding actually. It may look like I've got a lot of clamps on, but for good purpose. So the idea is, for where we're doing our plug welds here, which would originally been spot welds, I need to go through this plate that I've made the hole in and actually start welding underneath on the spine part of it. And then once the weld takes there, I can then bring it out and include this new panel. But what I want is a minimal amount of air gap between the two panels. So that's why I've put the clamps on super tight. Okay. So I'm going to get a good angle with my torch and basically go through without welding the top panel, but weld the underneath panel first and then bring the weld up and include that new panel, and that's a plug weld. Like so. So that's our welding pretty much done. I've stitched it all the way along the top and it's been plug welded along the bottom. I'm just going to brush up the welds, have a good look. I think that's good. And then all we need to do is grind all that flat and flush. And obviously this end here where I had to cut through to be able to chop that section out, I had to weld that back up as well. But I think it looks really good. So grinding time now. That's all our cutting and grinding done. As you remember, we started with a really small hole at the front. Now, we've got no floor pan, no heater channel, bottom of the A-post missing. Anyway, good news, next episode I'll be welding and putting stuff back in the car, so don't forget to join us. Make sure you subscribe, that'll give you notifications for all our future videos, but next one's going to be interesting and fun.